Hello, humans. This is supposed to be run on the week of Halloween, so this is like more creepy than usual. So if you're listening to this at some other time, just know this was my Halloween edition. So we're going to talk about goo or goo toxins, which I'll tell you what it is in a minute if you don't already know. But before I do, I want to give you a little quote from Lunyu. I'm not usually a big fan of Confucius overly, but he says, devote yourself to proper relationships with humanity, respect ghosts and spirits, sorry. Respect ghosts and spirits, but keep a distance from them. One can say this is wisdom. And actually, I'm really fascinated by things like ghosts and spirits and, the supernatural and creepy stuff and foxes and so forth in Chinese culture, Chinese medicine. But I like researching them in books, and it's not something I actually deal with in real life. So um, so what is goo? You probably have heard that this is some ancient black magic where they took a bunch of chong and the word chong. Oh, do we have the word chong here? Maybe not. The word chong is really any creepy crawly thing. It's not just bugs, it's not just insects, it's not just parasites, but it's also like toads and spiders and snakes and reptiles and also imaginary creepy crawly things. So then they would put them all in a bowl. This is at least the rumor. They'd put them all in a bowl with a lid for like 100 days. And in the end, all of them would be dead except one. And that one would contain all of the poison of all of the ones that didn't survive the 100 days. And then somehow they'd make that into something that they could slip into your food. And then when you ate it, there are various stories about what would happen. Um, you'd die in a certain amount of time if you didn't get the antidote. But when you died, somehow your possessions would pass on to the people who did this. And there was this idea that it was women of the minority, ethnic groups, especially in the south of China, who did it to northern men who, were in the south on business or were government officials. So they'd kind of seduce the men and then slip them some goo. And the men would say, okay, I have to go back home to get my stuff, but I'll come back to marry you, as soon as I can. And if they didn't come back, they would die. Well, as far as one of my theories is that these were just rumors that were put around to scare the men into treating these women better that they were, coming and taking advantage of. But anyway, let's get on with this. And hopefully I won't have to clear my throat again. I'm sorry. So this is from Xu Ming Yi Lian, which is a Qing dynasty book of case studies, and they always identify, or they often identify the original source. I don't know what this book is, but anyway. So in a certain year, the provincial governor named Chang'an, which is, different characters, but it's the name of the ancient capital of China, but different characters. Anyway, so this military governor, Mr. Chang, he held military power over the western border region. And so he came across a case of violent death by goo. Okay, so somebody's been practicing goo, somebody died, and he's investigating the case. The perpetrators were already securely in prison. So based on the documents that he, had, he read that the woman who raised the goo noticed a wealthy house nearby, and she knew the owners were out doing trade in far off places, maybe out the Silk Roads or something like that. Remember, they're in the western border region, so probably on the Silk Roads. And she knew that they would bring back all kinds of objects that were of value in order to sell them once they got back. So she asked an old woman who was a neighbor. I don't know, why didn't she do it herself? I don't know. But she asked an old woman who was a neighbor to go to the house and, say, hey, welcome back. I haven't seen you in a long time. How you doing? How is business? But then this old woman, this neighbor woman, once she got in, because she was their neighbor that let her in, she was to take advantage of getting inside the door by flinging some goo that she had hidden in her finger or her fingernail at the rich person, like bombing him, flicking, like kind of like spitballs, only flicking him with a finger. Well, the potential victim knew something was up, so he grabbed her and took her to the police. And when they investigated, they got the truth out of her. Based on her confession, she already had 19 goo attached to her when she first got married. So this is, different than you read different things because, this is supernatural and maybe there are different traditions or maybe different stories developed. But it's like, in other cases, it just sounds like it's a substance that they'll put on your food or, do whatever. But here there's actually a count. It's not just, a teaspoonful of goo. She had 19 particular goo spirits that were attached to her before she got married. And then after she was married, she and her husband killed 6 people. So it seems like what these 19 goo are the spirits of people that she poisoned with other goo, and now they're attached to her and they'll do her bidding. Okay, so now she has 25 like goo. And of the 6 people she had killed, they investigated and they found reliable evidence of 3. They dug up the bones of 2 different people and they found one in her house. I don't know why she's living with this dead body, but maybe it was fresh. Anyway, this Governor Chong, he found the case very strange and didn't really believe it. So the next day, Governor Chong summoned the woman because she's in jail and personally interrogated her. She told everything. She held nothing back. And then I ordered her to show me the goo she had been raising. Like they let her keep that while she was in jail. Anyway, so initially in the beginning of this, after he requested, she brought out an empty bamboo tube. You can like saw a bamboo tube using one of the nodes as the bottom of the container, and then you put a cork in it, and you can keep things inside those, like incense sticks were kept in bamboo tubes like that, and so forth. So anyway, she brings out this empty bamboo tube container, but he looked and there was nothing in it. And the woman said, this hall of law is a place where official matters are heard. Evil things do not dare to enter it. You first have to appease the deity of the building before you can see these goo. Otherwise, they just won't show up because they're magical. They can do what they want. So we did, somehow appease the deity of the building. And then the squirming red goo appeared in the tube. So Mr. Chong, I ordered an officer to trample the goo into a watery pulp. He said, they're not exterminated yet. So they tried to kill him and they weren't being killed. I ordered the woman to call out the goo that were still in the tube, because it wasn't even all of them. And they were still the same number as before. So even though they tried to kill them, they weren't killed and they appeared back in the tube again. That's weird. Because of this, we searched for a way of exterminating them. So we finally put the goo, chong is like insects here. Here's the word chong, so or creepy crawlies or whatever. We put the guchong in a stone casket. We sealed it up with magical paper that had talismans on it and threw it in the river. And this, they believe, successfully exterminated the goo. The harm done by goo is extremely toxic, but it's said that hedgehogs can catch goo chong and remove their malevolence. You know, hedgehogs, like, I don't know much about hedgehogs, but possums can eat ticks that, you know, that cause Lyme and other disease, and um, possums don't get rabies. And so maybe hedgehogs are similar to that. We don't have them where I live. Anyway, so it said that hedgehogs can catch goo and remove their malevolence. People don't really know that not all goo is not all the same. The most toxic type, even if you cut it up with a knife or smash it to pieces with a rock, if you set it on fire or bury it in the earth, the goo is unchanged and it's not exterminated. So, you know, this is something that once it's created, it's hard to get rid of. It goes on, goo attaches itself to women. This is, you know, it's almost always blamed on women. Not always, but almost always. It's another way for, you know, like men want to dominate women, but they're actually in some ways scared of women. So then they have these creepy fantasies. When it strikes people, they immediately die. But after dying, their belongings are transported by the goo to benefit the person who raised it. Every time someone is killed, the goo is increased by one. Some people say that the po, the corporeal soul that's associated with the lungs, the po of the murder victim becomes attached, and that's what becomes the goo. So, you know, as often happens, there are like a few difficult issues in this translation, and I asked my friend Leo Locke, and he's so good about helping. So yeah, thanks, Leo. Okay, so that's the first one. That's kind of long. The rest of them aren't quite so long. Here is from Ming Yi Leian, which is a Ming Dynasty book. So there's Shu Ming Leian, which is a Qing Dynasty book, and then there's Ming Yi Leian, which is a Ming Dynasty book. What it means is like famous doctors categorized cases. So it has cases, it's a collection of cases from, you know, doctors, historical doctors and current doctors at the time it was written, but they're categorized by, you know, all the wind cold stuff is here, and all the, you know, nausea and vomiting is in another section, and all the insomnia is in another section. So that's why they're categorized cases. And then Shuming Ilean means additional categorized cases of famous doctors, because it was a book later where he collected more of these. Anyway, so you know, job titles in ancient China are really hard to understand. I have a book that you could look up, like the job title of government officials. So, you know, I don't know what a secretariat drafter is, but you know, this guy was some government worker, and his family name was Yu, and he was struck by goo toxins. He suddenly encountered somebody, a Mr. Ding, who said, "Hey, I invite you to come in the morning, but don't eat before you come." And so when he came the next morning, then Ding asked Yu to open his mouth towards the light. And then he held up a seal. So, you know, we often call them a chop. Somebody signed, you know, in ancient China, instead of using a signature, they used a chop with often red ink to sign a document or to sign a work of art or whatever. And those seals also, some of them were made with like magical writing on it, and they could be used in, you know, magical ways. I mean, magic may not be the right word, but so this, he held up a seal that had some magical writing on it in front of this Mr. Yu, and waited. And after a while, out came a small red snake about 2 inches long, shaped like a hairpin. Okay. Well, you know, Chinese hairpins are like not flips, you know, they have like one long leg and then something decorative on top. Okay. So he quickly ordered fire to burn this little snake, and then you recovered. Okay, so maybe we think that's a parasite. I don't know. Maybe it was goo, but goo can come from snakes as well and take on different forms. So, yep, there's that. Some things I collected from non-medical books. There's this, maybe it can be translated as record of searching for spirits, so Shen Ji, which is, you can see, wow, really early dates. And it has some really interesting tales of the strange, and some of them involve goo. So a family somewhere was named Liao, and they practiced Gu for many generations, and they used it to become wealthy because, as we saw, you can get the wealth of the victim. Later, one of them took a new wife, but he never told her what the family did. And so one day the whole family went out and only this new wife stayed home. So she's looking around the house. She doesn't have her mother-in-law watching over her, so she can just go around and poke around and see what she finds. And she noticed a large jar inside of a room. So she opened it because they didn't have glass jars. This would be a ceramic jar and you can't see what's inside. She opened it to see what was in it and saw a large snake. Oh my God, oh my God. She must have been freaked out. So she poured boiling water on it to kill it. When the family returned, she was completely open about what she did because she thought she did the right thing because, wow, there was a snake in that jar. The whole family was alarmed and regretted it because, it was their goop. Soon after, the family became sick during an epidemic, and almost all of them died because their power was coming from the snake goo. Another story from the same book. Somebody named Zhao had goo dogs. They there's stories about them having like different animals that now have super powers that they've been transformed into something special to serve their owner, their master. So one time somebody named Chen visited this person, Zhao, and suddenly 6 or 7 big yellow dogs came out and barked at him. And later, when he went home and ate, how was he eating with the guy's wife? He's eating with the guy's wife. That's kind of suspect. Anyway, he vomited blood and nearly died. He only recovered by drinking a preparation of jagung. So, jagung is one of our herbs. And so maybe jagung could be used against certain types of goo. I don't know. But we don't usually use that for vomiting blood. Anyway, so goo toxins have strangeness similar to ghosts. Their demonic form transmutes into random things in different types. Sometimes they become dogs or pigs. Can you imagine a goo pig? Sometimes they become creepy, crawly things like snakes. The people who use them all know their form from their own experience. They do this to common people, and all who they strike will die. What I don't understand, though, is why do they want to harm common people? They want to harm rich people so they get their riches. Common people don't have a lot of riches. So, some of this doesn't really make sense. It's old stories. Yeah. So here's a cat ghost. And the way I came across this idea was in Zhenzhou Dacheng, this Ming Dynasty text on, Akimaksa. Under Ren 14, it says one of the things that Ren 14 treats is cat ghosts. What? What? I became so curious. Cat ghosts. So here's what I found out by searching for the Chinese on the internet. Cat ghosts are also called cat goo. Here, I keep translating goo as different, here worms, whatever, creepy crawlies and, magical creepy crawlies. Okay, so In ancient times, shaman cast spells using them. They raised animals such as cats and attached ghosts to the animals. And then they used incantations to urge the cats to harm people. This was a common idea in the Sui dynasty, which was a short dynasty just before the Tang dynasty. Um, so there was an empress whose family name was Dugu. It's one of those Chinese two-character surnames. Her half-brother named Dugu Tuo had a servant girl named Shu Ani who used cat goos. And so here's the story. This is from the Sui dynasty history. So Dugu Tuo's servant girl was named Shu Ani, and she originally came from his mother's house. So, when his mother died or when he moved out into his own house, the servant came with him. And she routinely worked with cat ghosts. Every day she made offerings to it at night. So is one of the 12 earthly branches related to the 12 animals. And what animal is it? It's the rat. So that's what she said is, she made offerings to the on days at night. Why? Because the hour is midnight and belongs to the rat. So she makes offering to the cat at the rat day and the rat time. Each time her cat ghost killed someone, the dead person's family belongings shifted to the household of the person who raised the cat ghost. Once, when she was at home, she's Dugu Tuo's servant, and Dugu Tuo demanded wine or liquor. His wife said, "We don't have any money to buy it." And so he called for the servant and said, "Hey, can you make your cat ghost go over to the Yue family's house and get me some money?" So she did an incantation, and the cat ghost came to her and went to the house and brought back money, and he could have his drunkenness. Yeah, not very nice. So here's another story I find pretty interesting, and this is from Mingy Leon. So this is from a medical book. A government official was traveling west with an eminent monk. So, traveling west probably means going onto the Silk Roads, into lands that aren't very occupied, and there's a lot of strange stuff out there. So on the road from some place named Guisha, they passed through a distant wasteland, and there was no place to stop. It was past noon and they were so hungry and so discouraged. And there's desert there, either hot if it was summer or is really cold if it's winter. They were so hungry and discouraged, and then they arrived at a small house, a cottage, and they could smell that the family raised goo. But because they were so hungry, they just needed to eat. And they felt there was no difference between staying and going. They were going to die if they went. They might die if they stayed. They might as well stay and fill their bellies. This is a picture of a monk named Xuanzang who traveled east to India to get Buddhist scrolls. You can see he made himself a backpack and he's got all of these scrolls there. He's pretty famous. So the monk said, "Hey, I have a divine incantation so we can eat without worry." When the food arrived, the monk closed his eyes and he kept chanting it and reciting his incantation. And presently, a small spider appeared on the edge of the bowl. The monk quickly killed it. So that's the goo that was in their food. Consequently, they could eat no problem. And so they even give the incantation. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that occasionally ancient medical texts have incantations for things, but when they do, it's usually like kind of things that have a supernatural or like a really weird edge to it. It's not like, if somebody has a normal case of damp heat in the liver and gallbladder, there are no incantations for that. Well, maybe there are, but, the incantations would be for, weird things usually. And so here's the incantation. The second thing, though, is that the pronunciation at that time in that place is going to be totally different than Mandarin pronunciation. So this is the pinyin, this is Mandarin pronunciation. That's probably not how it sounded at all. And then as far as trying to translate it, I tried to translate it, but incantations are words of magic, and sometimes they are just not translatable. In addition, some of this seems to be like phonetically trying to write Sanskrit words in Chinese characters. Like this last part, mohesa, mohesa, apparently that's Mahasattva, so this is Indian Sanskrit sounds that have been put into Chinese characters. Okay, so the best I can translate this, and there's like a lot I don't understand. This Gusu, Su is a family name, and Gu can mean like a woman. But then this word is beak, like the beak of a bird. And then Moye is Maya, the illusion in Buddhism or Hinduism. If that's what this means. Those are the characters that are used to write it in Chinese, though. And then this is to peck, like a bird pecks on something. So here we have a beak, and here we have pecking. Maybe because birds eat bugs, maybe that has something to do with, getting the goo bugs. Anyway, then it says, I know bug toxins live in the four corners of this house, probably. Your father, the father of the goo, is the endless domed heavens, and the mother of the goo is the daughter of Shoye. And I couldn't really find for sure what this Shoye is. There's a place, I'm not sure if it's a mythical place that was called Shoye. So maybe it's that, but I couldn't really figure that out. Your family has hundreds, millions, thousands, because bugs, are everywhere. I now know all of you. Like I recognize you, I see you. And then Mahasattva, Mahasattva. Okay, well, so there you have a mantra if you ever are really scared that there's goo being put in your food. So at that time, the traveling companions fully passed on the original mantra. They let other people know so that people could save themselves from goo. And this let them arrive at their destination in good health. Okay? Okay. This might be the last one. Let's see what we have. This goes back to that book, Searching for Spirits, which is not a medical book. So I don't know who's speaking, but it says the husband of my wife's sister, so my brother-in-law, yeah, his name is Zhang Shi, and he had a servant that lived in the house. So he or she, the servant, got sick with blood in the stool. The Chinese, it's not clear if it's a he or she. The doctor thought he or she was struck by goo. Then they secretly spread something called Rangha gun under the mat without letting the patient know. Okay, so this Rangha gun is root, is also pronounced Shanghe. Yeah, and this is some type of ginger. It might be this kind of ginger. And that's supposed to be a picture of it. It's not your normal, regular, everyday ginger that we're most familiar with. So they spread some of this herb under his mat without letting the patient know. And then the doctor used these crazy words. The one who fed me goo was Zhang Xiao. And then he shouted, Xiao is destroyed. And at the present, many people use this Rangha gun for attack by goo, and it's often effective. And then they say it has another name, Jiacao. Okay, so, get some ginger and put it under your bed if you're worried about goo. Yeah, so that's it, my cases for today. I hope that they're suitable for Halloween. And yeah, I'll see you next time.